The morning sky over Stirling was the kind of pale, soft gray that Scotland does so beautifully. Not dark enough to feel like rain, but cool and clean, with a gentle wind that moved through the old streets and carried with it the smell of autumn leaves and fresh air. The city had been awake since early, and not just because of the usual rhythm of daily life. Something special was happening, something that did not come around every day. The people of Stirling had known for weeks that Prince William and Princess Catherine were coming, and in those weeks, excitement had slowly built up like water rising behind a dam, quietly, steadily, until the morning of the visit finally arrived and everything spilled over into joy. Streets that were usually busy with the ordinary noise of a working city had transformed. These shop owners had put Union flags in their windows. School children had made banners out of paper and painted them in bold reds and blues and golds, their small hands leaving smudges of color along the edges. Elderly residents who had seen royal visits before sat on folding chairs near the barriers, wrapped in scarves and coats, their faces calm and knowing, as if they understood better than anyone what moments like this really meant. Younger people stood in groups, phones already out, the anticipation on their faces so clear it was almost like a visible thing, something you could reach out and touch. The royal couple had a packed schedule that day. Their visit to Stirling was not simply a ceremonial appearance designed to shake a few hands and wave at cameras. And it was a genuine engagement with the city and its people, a series of carefully planned meetings, conversations, and moments meant to shine a light on the work being done in communities across Scotland. William and Catherine had always believed that the monarchy's value lay not in its distance from ordinary people, but in its closeness to them. And nowhere was that belief more visible than on days like this, when they stepped out of the formal bubble and walked directly into the warmth of a crowd. The first sign that something was about to happen came around mid-morning. A quiet ripple moved through the gathered crowd, the kind of collective awareness that passes through a group of people before any announcement is made. Heads turned, necks craned. A low murmur rose and then spread, as and children who had been getting restless were suddenly still, their eyes wide. Police officers in high-visibility jackets stood a little straighter. Cameras were raised, and then, around a corner and into full view, the royal car arrived. It was not a dramatic entrance in the theatrical sense. There were no trumpets, no fanfare, no red carpet rolled out across the cobblestones. But there was something about it that felt genuinely majestic, in the truest meaning of that word. Not the kind of majesty that lives in gold and ceremony, but the quieter kind that comes from watching two people carry themselves with grace and purpose, stepping into a moment and filling it completely. William stepped out first. He was dressed simply but smartly. A dark jacket, a neat collar, his expression open and ready. He stood for a moment and looked out at the crowd, and even from a distance the warmth on his face was unmistakable. He smiled, and it was the smile of someone who was genuinely pleased to be there. Then Catherine stepped out, and the crowd reacted as crowds always do when she appears. With a collective breath, a swell of noise that was part cheer and part something more tender than that. She was dressed in an outfit that seemed perfectly chosen for the Scottish autumn. Deep, rich tones that felt both elegant and approachable, her hair moving slightly in the breeze, her smile immediate and real. She did not look like someone performing warmth. She looked like someone who actually felt it. The two of them stood together for just a moment before moving toward the waiting crowd, and in that brief pause, something passed between them, a glance, a small shared smile, that was quiet and private and yet somehow visible to everyone watching. What happened next was the part that those who were there would remember most. Because royal visits can sometimes feel like carefully managed events in which everyone knows their role and plays it correctly, in which the distance between the visiting dignitary and the ordinary person is politely maintained even when they are standing only a foot apart. This visit was not like that. William and Catherine moved through the crowd with a naturalness that disarmed people. They stopped. They listened. They asked questions and waited for real answers. They crouched down to speak to children at eye level, and accepting the slightly crumpled drawings and the shy handshakes with the kind of attention that made each child feel, for that moment, like the most important person in the world. One woman near the front of the barrier had brought her mother, who was in her late 80s and had traveled from a village about 30 miles from Stirling specifically for this visit. The older woman had seen the Queen twice in her life, and had always said that seeing the royal family in person was something different from seeing them on television, that there was a presence to it, an energy that photographs and screens could not capture. When Catherine stopped in front of her and took her hand, the old woman's face did something complicated and beautiful. It softened and brightened at the same time, and her eyes filled with tears that she blinked away quickly, embarrassed by them but unable to stop them. Catherine did not move on immediately. She stayed. She asked the woman her name and where she had come from, and she listened to the answer with her whole face, the way people listen when they are genuinely interested and not just being polite. William, meanwhile, had found himself in conversation with a group of teenagers who had come as part of a school trip. They were at the age where coolness is a kind of armor and showing enthusiasm for anything is risky business. But William had a way with young people that consistently broke through that particular defense. He was easy with them, not trying too hard, not performing friendliness, just talking to them the way one human being talks to another. He asked them about school, about what they wanted to do after, about whether they had been to Stirling Castle before. One boy, braver than the others, asked William a question back, something direct and slightly cheeky, the kind of question that could have produced an awkward silence. Instead, William laughed, a genuine, unguarded laugh, and gave a real answer, and the group around him relaxed visibly, the armor coming down, the smiles becoming real. Stirling itself was a city that deserved to be the setting for a story like this. It was a place of deep history, the kind of city where the past is not just something preserved in museums, but something you can feel in the stones under your feet. The castle on the hill above the city had watched over this landscape for centuries. Battles had been fought here. Kings and queens had walked these streets. And now, and on this particular morning, 2 more members of that long royal line were here, connecting the present to that long thread of history in a way that felt neither forced nor artificial, but simply true. The official part of the visit included a stop at a local community project that had been working for several years to provide support and resources to young people in some of the more economically pressured parts of the city. The project had started small. A few volunteers, a borrowed space, a handful of young people who had nowhere else to go after school. Over time, it had grown into something remarkable, a genuine hub of activity and support, with programs covering everything from mental health to vocational skills to arts and music. The people who ran it were not looking for recognition. They were simply doing the work, showing up every day because they believed in it. When William and Catherine arrived at the project, the staff and young people inside had tried to stay calm about it. They had told themselves it would be just another visit, that they should treat it normally, that the best thing they could do was carry on being themselves, and for the most part, they succeeded. But there was no hiding the energy in the room, the heightened alertness, the nervous laughter, the way people kept straightening things that didn't need straightening. When the royal couple walked in, the room changed in the way rooms do when something significant enters them. Not with noise or drama, but with a kind of focused attention that made everything feel more vivid. William spent a long time with the young people in the program. He sat with them, and he heard about the challenges they had faced, some of which were heavy and serious, the kind of difficulties that leave marks. And he responded not with the careful, distanced sympathy of someone who has only read about such things, but with the engaged concern of someone who has spent years working to understand them. His work on mental health had given him a genuine framework for these conversations, and it showed. The young people talked to him honestly, which was perhaps the greatest compliment they could have given. Honesty in those kinds of conversations is not automatic. It has to be earned. Catherine, in another part of the room, was doing something similar. She had always had a particular gift for making people feel seen, not just looked at, but actually seen, but the way you feel when someone truly understands what you are saying and reflects it back to you. She spoke with a young woman who had come through a difficult period in her own life and had found in the project a kind of anchor, a place to be, people who noticed if she wasn't there. The young woman spoke quietly and carefully, and Catherine listened in the same way, and at the end of their conversation the young woman seemed lighter somehow, as if something had been acknowledged that she had needed acknowledged for a long time. Outside, the crowd had not dispersed. People waited patiently, content simply to be near the event, even if they could not see the details of it. There was something communal about the waiting, a shared sense of occasion that brought strangers into a kind of temporary fellowship. People chatted who would never normally speak to each other. An older man explained to a young couple the history of a royal visit he had witnessed decades earlier. A group of women compared the outfits they had spotted and debated the details with the happy seriousness that people bring to things they care about. A toddler in a pushchair, oblivious to all of it, ate a biscuit with great concentration. When William and Catherine emerged again and moved back through the crowd toward their car, there was a warmth in the air that had not been there at the start of the morning. Or perhaps it had always been there, and the visit had simply made it visible. The cheers were genuine. The waves were returned, over and over, the royal couple pausing again and again to acknowledge individual faces, individual moments, as if they understood that each one mattered. There is something that happens at events like this that is difficult to put into words, but important to try to name. It is not simply admiration, and it is not simply celebrity. It is something older and more complicated. A need that human beings have to see their collective life represented, to watch the symbols of their shared history behave with grace and humanity, to feel that the institutions and figures they have inherited are worthy of that inheritance. William and Catherine, on that morning in Stirling, were worthy of it. They brought no pretense with them, no visible performance of duty. They brought themselves, attentive, warm, curious, real. And that was more than enough. The city of Stirling would talk about the visit for days afterward. In cafes and shops and school corridors, and people would share what they had seen or heard or felt. The woman who had her hand held by a princess, the teenager who made a prince laugh, the young people in the community project who had been listened to as if their words carried weight, because they did carry weight, and someone had come all the way to Stirling to confirm it. By the time the royal car disappeared from view, and the crowds began slowly to thin, and the ordinary rhythms of the city began to reassert themselves, something had shifted, not dramatically, not in a way that would make headlines or change the course of history, but in the smaller, quieter way that real things shift. A day had been marked. A city had been seen. Two people had shown up and been genuinely present, and that presence had mattered to the people who witnessed it. In the end, that is what royal visits at their best are truly about. Not the ceremony, not the spectacle, but the simple and profound act of showing up and caring about what you find when you get there. William and Catherine had done exactly that in Stirling, and the city was richer for it. I'm sorry the document creation tools are experiencing issues right now. Once they recover, I can put this into a proper Word document for you. Would you like me to try again shortly?